everybody. It's another Thursday night Real Monster Show. I am your host, S.K. Barrett, and joining me, as always, is the lovely and talented Wes Hobrick.
Hello, hello, hello. I am in my Vanna White flesh dress. My
Woo!
Van my Vanna White Geen flesh dress.
Made out of an actual Vanna White.
Exactly. I look
That seems
amazing.
it's an appropriate attire for the show, I have to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, we have a very interesting show tonight. One that I'm going to hazard a guess, as the saying is, that most people know very little about, including me.
Yeah, and it's astounding. I really didn't realize how much I didn't know until doing the research. So,
Yeah, I
definitely
mean,
in that
I
boat
knew
too.
about the key event, but really not a whole lot beyond that. And I
Y-
can't wait to dig
Yeah.
into this.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of the most interesting cults we're going to talk about. So,
Yeah, in a number of different aspects.
hmm
But first, this week in crime history.
dun dun dun. July 18th, the year 2000. Police confirm the body found in England is missing 8-year-old Sarah Payne, murdered by pedophile Roy Weeding, missing 16 days.
Hmm.
Uh, July 19th, 1879. Doc Holliday kills for the first time.
That
He
they
goes,
know of.
yeah, and he goes west at this year to clear up his tuberculosis to get better air, as it were.
Right.
He starts a saloon where he's at, and when he's in there, an army scout threatens one of his working girls. And Doc shoots him dead with just one shot. So,
I'll be your Huckleberry.
I'm your Huckleberry. My favorite part of that is in vino veritas.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
in wine truth for people who don't know. But yeah, another interesting thing about Doc Holliday,
What's
he
that?
actually had the same disease that I have, essential tremor.
Oh,
So his
really?
hands shook when they were at activity. Yeah.
And yet
Um,
he was a dead shot.
oh yeah, and he was a dentist too.
Yeah. How would you like that?
Seriously. But yeah, he had that. I remember when I was out in Arizona, we went to a ghost town that they had up there, and it had one of his jackets preserved in it. It's pretty
Interesting.
cool. Yeah, but July 20th, 1985, only one survivor after four attacked by the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez.
One survivor.
Yeah,
We're going to talk about that dude in a couple of weeks, I do believe.
absolutely. He is an interesting one. What sticks out most to me though with Richard Ramirez, there was one report that his breath was so bad it would knock a guy over. Seriously, that was the
Oh,
verbiage they used.
I worked with that guy.
Well, there you go. But July 21, 1924, Leopold and Loeb plead guilty to the so-called perfect crime of kidnapping and killing a 14-year-old boy in Chicago. Very interesting story there as well, with Clarence Darrow as their defense attorney, the great civil rights activist and agnostic, who was
Hmm.
also very much a philosopher. And he's actually a hero of mine, but we'll get to him if we do a show on him.
Yeah.
Uh, July 22nd, 1934, the first Public Enemy #1, John Dillinger, is shot dead while exiting Chicago's Biograph Theater.
Ah,
Shot,
by the
shot 6 times in the
by the
back.
feds?
Yes. Yep. They ambushed him, shot him 6 times in the back.
Yeah. Way to go,
Gee.
brave federal agents shooting a guy in the back. But you know what?
Well,
That's kind of the police philosophy is they don't want a fair fight. And for good reasons.
yeah, I mean, this is true. You got to preserve their safety.
Yeah.
But he's also, Dillinger is a huge part of that mob culture of Chicago. You haven't been there. It's kind of interesting. You want to go once and then not go back, but my
Yeah.
opinion is biased, most definitely, being in Illinois
The
myself.
we are still to this day suffering under the unintended consequences of prohibition.
Oh, yeah. In so many ways, just looking at the drug war is a big one, and
Yeah.
everything from that. People still have that
Organized crime,
mindset.
all
Yeah,
kinds of consequences.
exactly. And
If it
it's
wasn't
amazing that more people don't get that.
if it wasn't for prohibition, there'd have been no Dillinger. There would have been no
Capone.
Capone. Uh,
Exactly. If it weren't for meddling fucking Protestants who should mind their own damn business, there wouldn't have been prohibition either.
right.
So, but July 23rd, 1942, Britain's most famous female serial killer, Myra Hindley, is born. She is
Oh.
half of the Moors murders duo with Ian
Yes.
Brady.
Yes, Manchester.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
Killed five.
One of the very rare serial killer couples.
Yep.
Interestingly, Northern England had two.
Them and Fred and Rose West.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
Why that
fairly
is.
contemporaneous to each other too.
Yeah, definitely close. But July 24th, 1909, middle class murderer John Haig, Haigh, is born in Stamford, UK. Raised to strict Plymouth Brethren, they had a very, very strict prohibition against religious symbols because of the second commandment, thou shalt make no graven image.
Yeah.
Um, and he ended up, I guess, going to a cathedral, which was another prohibited activity. He sees an image of the bleeding Christ, and this triggers a sexual vampirism in him.
Okay, so there was something else going on there. Just
Oh,
saying.
yeah. Well, hierophilia is a very interesting fetish. Meaning sexual attraction to religious objects.
Mm,
There's even some people who are flogged in the manner of Christ and then put on not a bondage cross, but a regular cross
wow.
that mimics all that, and that's how they get off. Um, if you search
There's
hierophilia,
literally
you can
no
get some
limit to the
weird
ways
stuff.
people are fucked in the head.
Yeah, no limit at all. But he ended up having 6 victims. He killed also for profit, which
Oh,
is interesting. And what he would do is kill them in a manner that he would drink their victims' blood and then dissolve their remains in acid. He was known as the acid bath murderer.
oh, that guy.
Yep,
That guy. What was his name again?
that was John Haig,
And
Haigh.
he was in England, right?
Yes,
And
Stanford, UK.
and as I recall, he let somebody get executed for one of his murders.
Oh, really?
Yes. He lets
I did not
not
read
just
that.
take the fall and go to prison, but actually be hung for one of his crimes.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah.
He'd be an interesting
That's
one. We should put
that's
him on the
cold,
list to
man.
examine. That really is. I mean, geez. But that is all I have for that segment.
Alrighty. Okay, so first order of business. How the hell do you pronounce this name, and what does the name mean? Who and what does the name belong to? Is it a person?
The name is pronounced Aum Shinrikyo. Think of it like
Okay.
you know how yoga, when they're in the stance and they're meditating, they say Aum.
Yeah.
It's that basically. But
Okay.
what it roughly translates to in Japanese is the truth. And it belongs to the actual cult itself that we will be examining here. But What I wanted to do to start it off was with a quote.
Okay.
Towards morning, I also began to feel pain. It increased with every quarter of an hour, and about 7 o'clock my eyes were scorching. A few hours later, my eyes were like glowing coals, and all was darkness around me. Who do you think said that?
What is it? Can you tell me what they're talking about?
The context of this is a World War I trench
Oh,
warfare.
sounds like chemical burns.
Towards morning, I also began to feel pain. It increased with every quarter of an hour, and about 7 o'clock my eyes were scorching. A few hours later, my eyes were like glowing coals, and all was darkness around me. That is Adolf Hitler, written in Mein Kampf.
Interesting. So he got stung at least by some mustard gas then.
Exactly. He did, and that we will be looking at a gas today. And this gas, sarin gas, was so potent that even Hitler refused to use it in the Second World War. The Germans invented it in 1938 as a way to kill weevils that were tearing apart their fields.
Oh, really?
Yep. But then when they realized how potent this was, they basically go to the Fuhrer and say, hey, we should be using this out in the field. But for whatever reason, Hitler said no, repeatedly.
And not even on the Jews.
No, the gas that they used for the Jews was Zyklon B, which I didn't read too much into that, but a bit on sarin gas, the man-made nerve agent, odorless, colorless, tasteless. It
Wow.
is a liquid, and when it dissolves or evaporates, gets into the atmosphere, and from there onto your clothes, absorbed through your skin, and of course breathed into your system. But
So
it is
so it's it's almost like, because Hitler experienced, got a taste of mustard gas, that it turned him off the idea of even using it on his enemies.
yeah, that's what a lot of people have speculated, which is interesting because it shows some empathy there, I would think.
Something like empathy is like you don't think of Hitler as having limits to his cruelty.
Oh, not
Um,
at all. You
but
think of him as the pure archetypal psychopath.
which he totally is, but in
Yeah,
in this one case, he said no, which is
yeah.
fascinating.
People still are speculating as to why, which is just,
Yeah.
it's fascinating, really. But, yeah, a bit more on sarin. True form liquid, also known as GB. Sarin is actually an acronym of the different scientists' names who developed it.
Oh,
It is,
no kidding.
yeah, it's similar to organophosphate insecticides. But let's see. German scientist Gerhard Schrader developed it as a cheaper way to kill those weevils. And he did this initially by mixing phosphorus and cyanide,
Mm.
which was a very crude mixture and they had to refine it. But yeah, the Nazis were actually sitting on about 12,000 tons of sarin.
And how much is a lethal dose for a human?
A, a lethal dose, if it is refined enough,
Yeah.
is a single drop.
And they had 12,000 tons?
Yeah, seriously.
What did they do with it?
They overkill.
No, I
I
mean
would.
after the war, what happened to it?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I'm not totally sure on that.
I mean,
I
you
did
don't just
not look
flush it down
into
the toilet.
it. Well, this is true, but yeah, the main way we mentioned that it's a nerve agent.
Right?
What sarin does to the body, the way it kills primarily is through convulsions.
Oh,
Um,
Jesus.
Immediate signs and symptoms of sarin exposure. This is from the CDC's website on terrorism.
Yeah.
People may not know they were exposed because it has no odor. If they're exposed to a low or moderate dose by breathing the contaminated air, eating contaminated food, or drinking contaminated water, or touching contaminated surfaces, they may experience all or some of these: runny nose, watery eyes, pinpoint pupils, eye pain, blurred vision, drooling, excessive sweating, cough, chest tightness, rapid breathing, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, and or abdominal pain, increased urination, confusion, drowsiness, weakness, headache, slower fast heart rate, lower high blood pressure.
Well,
Even a small drop on the skin can cause sweating and muscle twitching.
Jesus.
Yeah,
The problem with that is that's a very long list of symptoms that are pretty non-specific.
yeah, exactly. And that was part of the problem with the main attack that we're going to be looking at now. Fast forward to March 20th, 1995. Sarin gas is released on the Tokyo subway. This is actually the
Yeah.
first use of sarin as a weapon of mass destruction. 12 ended up dying, and one ended up dying later from the injuries. But
1995.
yes, about 7:46 to 8:46 a.m. that morning is where you look at the
During
events.
peak commuter hours.
Yes, yes, when people are all going to work. You had 5 different men took sarin wrapped up in plastic and newspaper, and they took umbrellas with sharpened tips, and the plan was to discreetly drop them on the subway
Yeah.
and puncture them with the umbrella and walk out before it can evaporate.
So on the train or on the platform?
A few of them did it on the train, and a few did it on the platform.
Okay.
Their goal was to spread it out to get maximum damage. Let's see, Tokyo at the time was the world's largest metropolis. They figured they could get thousands of people with the amount that they had. And each
So
of them actually also carried a syringe with the sarin antidote in it.
oh.
Yeah, which came in handy later because one of the guys exposed himself during all this.
I'm surprised it was just one. And why didn't
Yeah.
they just shoot that up beforehand anyway?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure why
If
they
I'm
wouldn't
going
do
in to
that.
drop some poisonous gas and there's an antidote, I'm fucking taking that beforehand.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, and it's just amazing, this whole thing. And it ended up with this attack. You had 54 who were severely injured, 980 moderately affected, and over 5,000 were seeking medical attention.
Jesus.
Yeah.
But even with those numbers, the number of fatalities is shockingly low for something so potent.
It really is, and the reason for that was they didn't refine it correctly.
Oh.
Yep. And then you had a
I
few
want to
where they
bring
also
I want
didn't
to I want to
puncture
bring
it.
call back to that point later when we're talking about Australia.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, the non-existent country of Australia comes into this. So
Yes.
the country that looks like Scooby-Doo, another conspiracy.
It really
But
does.
another thing that was really interesting here was the social pedigree, if you will, of the 5 who were carrying the sarin onto the train. One, and forgive me, I didn't write down any of the Japanese names of these people because they're really not important. Really, the only important one here is going to be the cult leader. And we'll get to
Okay.
him after we describe. You had one who was 31 and a graduate in applied physics. Another, 37, his degree was in artificial intelligence. Another one with the master's degree. This guy, the artificial intelligence guy,
Yeah.
was carrying 30 sarin packages when all the
3?
others had only 2.
Okay.
Yep. He did it to, quote, prove his loyalty. Another one, age 30, was holder of a postgraduate degree in physics. And another one, this got me just totally, I didn't see this coming. Another one, 48, oldest of the cult's chemical brigade, as they were called. He wore a surgical mask when he got on. And we'll get back to that in just a second. But he was a leading cardiologist in Tokyo.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
hold on now. Not only was this top cardiologist a cult member, but he was e- essentially on a suicide mission.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely knew the power of what he was carrying.
Yeah, I mean, there was a chance he wouldn't die, but there was an excellent chance that he would die one way or another in this attack.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you consider that he was actually one of them, and I can't remember who the other one was, but they failed to accurately or correctly puncture the packets with the
Oh,
umbrellas. That was also partly why it wasn't more deadly.
okay.
Um, but yeah, he was a top cardiologist, quit his job, and uprooted his family to the cult in 1990. And another thing I found interesting, I never thought about this until studying this crime.
Yeah.
It's a social custom in Japan to wear surgical masks everywhere in public when you're sick,
Yes.
even
Yes.
just a
Many
little
places
sick.
in Asia, that is true. Yes.
I did
Um,
not know that until I researched this.
um,
Very, very interesting.
we have a quite large Asian population here in the greater Seattle area from many regions across Asia, and it's not at all uncommon to see people wearing masks during flu season.
Wow. And
I mean,
that's
it's not a
interesting.
regular thing, but it's not a surprising thing either.
Hmm. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a courtesy.
Hmm. Dang. Yeah, even when they're just a little bit sick.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it also, to some degree, would protect him from the sarin. Um, but again, even when you don't necessarily know you've been exposed to that, it leaches into your clothes
Right.
and it gets to people
And
as
you
you.
don't have to breathe it. It can just get on your skin.
Yep, yep. But the fifth attacker, 27, was on a train about 10 minutes behind the 4 others.
Yeah.
He held a top honors degree in applied physics. And he was also one of the top chemists there. So he was central to the manufacture of the sarin in the cult. Um,
So, one of the things I love about this is that it's really easy to paint cult members as, dumb hicks,
yep.
you know,
Yeah, or hippies with,
or
very
hippies.
little education.
Yeah, that these are people who are just easily um, cowed or brainwashed or manipulated, that they're not all that bright to begin with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But this goes so strongly against that mythology.
It really does. I mean, like I said at the beginning, these people are top social pedigree
Yeah.
in Tokyo. But yeah, a bit more about sarin. To put it in perspective, it is 26 times more deadly than cyanide,
Whoa.
which is the gas that they would use in gas chambers in the United States to execute. But and with sarin, another interesting thing there, that's the gas that Saddam Hussein used against the Kurds in 1988.
Oh, is it?
Yep. Killed 3,200 to 5,000 and injured 7,000 to 10,000. It was also a very prevalent gas in the Syrian civil war the past couple of years. 336 separate Syrian gas attacks throughout that war. Hundreds of thousands dead from sarin.
Wow.
But
All right, so I think it might be time to talk about this cult that spawned this attack.
yes, and I was just getting to that. One of the attackers, when it was close to the synchronized time that they were to puncture the packages, 8 a.m.,
Yeah.
this is a quote from him. I was envious of the people who could just walk out of there, but I told myself this is nothing less than salvation.
Okay.
Yeah,
How exactly is murder salvation?
well, we'll be getting
I
into
mean,
that.
granted, it's not the first time we have or will run across that sentiment, that doctrine. Um,
Man, yeah,
but
precisely.
still, how do you convince how do you convince a large number of people that murder is salvation?
Charisma, and we'll be getting into that here.
Okay.
This is another quote from the attackers. The teachings tell us that human feelings are the result of seeing things in the wrong way. We must overcome our human feelings. Which is very interesting because there is a little bit of truth to that, I think.
Um, Buddha said attachment is the source of all suffering, for example.
He did.
Um, there is um, there is a yeah, I think and this is one of the great tools of the charismatic is to find a grain of truth and then warp it to suit your purposes.
Yep. Warp it and exploit it. Definitely. But these teachings are from a man who claimed, mind you, to be a, quote, manifestation of Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction and rebirth.
Really?
His holy name, was Shoko Asahara, a half-blind Christ-like figure. And a bit about him, I just have to
Yes,
find my
please.
page in this legal pad. It's kind of out of order. He was born Chizuo Matsumoto. I apologize if I'm butchering those Japanese names. That's why I was
Yeah,
trying to limit
we do
them,
the
as I
best we
said.
can. We do the best we can.
We try. He was born in the Kumamoto Prefecture in 1955, one of 9 children in a poor family. His father was a part-time traditional weaver, which
Whoa.
brought in barely enough money for one man, let alone a whole family.
And he had
But
9 kids?
9 kids, yep.
Yikes.
But Chizuo Matsumoto was born with severely limited vision in his left eye, and he had vision problems with the right eye.
Wow.
So he's, functionally blind, essentially. And he was sent later on to the prefectural school for the blind at age 6.
Okay.
Yeah. And from there, he graduated in 1975, failed the entrance exams for medical school and law school. So what's he do?
I'm really kind of glad you don't really want a vision impaired doctor. I'm sorry. Maybe they exist, but there's too much visual information that a doctor needs.
This is true.
Like,
I don't know if I would have a problem with a blind doctor necessarily. I definitely would with a blind surgeon. Rim
I
shot.
mean, yeah, but you can't go in there and go, "Hey, doc, will you take a look at this rash?"
Will you feel my rash? It's in Braille.
Yeah, that's that's gonna be problematic.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose it is, definitely. But yeah, he failed those entrance exams. So what's he do? This is another thing that I think will get you based upon that blind doctor line of conversation.
Yeah.
He becomes an acupuncturist.
Ooh, well, I'm actually less concerned about that. In
Well,
fact, have you ever had
eh,
acupuncture?
no, I would not let somebody stick needles in me
I
like
I I
that.
actually did once or twice, and I didn't feel it at all. So
Really?
yeah, really did not feel any stabbing pain at all.
Well, with me, it's not that I'm worried about that necessarily, but I do have a phobia of needles. It's very hard for me to do a blood test or to
Oh,
get a shot. So I
yeah.
had a very good friend who was a heroin addict, and he
Ah.
showed me his holes one day. That's what gave me the phobia there. Yeah, he
Oh,
ultimately ended up taking 2 barrels of a shotgun to his head
yikes.
around 2010. But
Heroin is an awful, awful thing.
it is. I have him immortalized on a tattoo on my left arm. Andy. But yeah, so he opens that acupuncture practice. He moves to the Shiba prefecture just south of Tokyo and sets it up where he is also, and no real surprise here, hawking fake alternative meds.
Yeah, see, there's a lot of people put a huge amount of faith into um, traditional Asian medicines and practices. Um, mm,
Well,
my
I mean,
my personal opinion is if I have to believe in it, it's not a good thing.
yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the placebo effect is a
Well,
wonderful thing.
that is actually, and that's the only saving grace at all, is that the placebo effect is actually a very, very real thing, and it's okay to you know just go ahead and acknowledge that that's a thing, and if you have a strong uh, propensity towards that, then by God, that's
Hmm.
awesome. There was a guy back in the 70s. He actually wanted to start a line of products, and he wanted to label them as placebos for various ailments, and they would just be sugar pills, but actually label it as a placebo for headaches or placebo for sleeplessness or whatever, and the FDA wouldn't let him do it.
I can't say I blame the FDA with that. Wouldn't it kind of defeat the purpose if you
No,
had to label it placebo?
his claim was that it didn't matter, that the
See,
placebo effect for some people is so strong you can even tell them it's a placebo and it won't matter.
huh, I had always thought that was the opposite, that it kills it if they know, but maybe not. At any rate, with Shoko, in 1978, he marries and he settles down, and he has a relatively dull life for a little while. But in 1982, he is convicted for
Uh-oh.
hawking these bullshit medicines.
Oh.
And
S-
I have to say, I'm not usually in favor of laws that do that sort of thing, but a law against alternative medicine that is bullshit isn't necessarily a bad idea,
It,
in my
it
opinion.
depends on the claims you make, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the claims are what ultimately quantifies the bullshit
Right.
and qualifies it indefinitely.
And whether or not it's actually harmful for you as opposed to helpful.
Oh, exactly. Most definitely
So
depends on what the
so he
science
got
says.
in hot water with the law then over selling this shit.
He did, and the interesting thing is, as we go through this, how the law just does not seem to touch these guys. But we'll get to that as to why. Around this time in Japan, the country was becoming a economic powerhouse, becoming very capitalist, very decadent, for lack of a better word. It was kind of like the 1920s in the United States.
Oh, Japan was economically was in the 80s was insane.
Yep.
It was I don't know if we have maybe the 20s, but most people here don't really have a memory of that. I guess the closest thing anybody listening to this might relate to would be the dot-com bubble of the late 90s, early
Yeah,
2000s.
yeah, that might be a little bit better. Something that people can understand a bit more, but at any rate, the effects of it bred essentially a whole generation that's disaffected with consumerism, you know?
Yeah.
And it doesn't really help with that at the same time you had the new age stuff coming on the scene
Oh, yeah. Oh,
worldwide.
by the way, at the time also Tokyo had the most expensive real estate in the world. There was a
Wow.
there was an article of I think it was in Forbes, I think,
Oh yeah.
where they said that a piece of real estate that could be covered by spreading open the magazine and laying it on the sidewalk in
Mhm.
Tokyo, that was worth $1 million.
Damn. Wow. It's freaking amazing. I don't even think that's true in the United States.
No. And
Dang.
there was a lot of fear throughout the world that Japan was gonna economically take over the world. A- and
Wow.
you got a lot of Hollywood movies along those themes. If you go back, you have stuff like Black Rain and uh, I can't even remember all of them, but there was a bunch of them about you know the economic powerhouse that Japan had become in the 80s.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. But in the midst of all this, you had quite a few religions, new religions, competing for people's attention in Japan.
Yeah.
And one of them was a religion called Egon Shu, founded in 1954. It was essentially a mix of Hinduism and Buddhism in its teachings. And Asahara at the time joins it. And this is where he gets the idea for Aum Shinrikyo. And he ends up founding it around 1984 after engineering a spiritual crisis so he could leave his family and Egon Shu. He goes to India for 2 years to, quote, study spiritual texts. So, no clue what he was doing there. Maybe learning how to manipulate people better.
Right.
But yeah, in 1984, he founds what he calls, if you thought Aum Shinrikyo was hard to say, Aum Shinzen no Kai was the original name of it.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
they shorten
Good
it.
job
They shorten it to Aum
simplifying that.
Shinrikyo. Uh, yeah, that was kind of first of their really weird PR that definitely got people's attention. And we actually shared this on our Facebook page. If you go there, they did quite a few anime videos
Oh yeah. Oh my
of the
God,
guru.
they're just breathtaking.
Do we have the pictures of Asahara? I thought I included a still from the anime in there.
Let me see if we did. Uh, which one would that be? The him with his head above the mountain? I don't see one that's all anime.
There's not one that looks like he's a cartoon in there.
Uh-uh.
Oh crap. Well, I am sorry, people. I thought we put that in there. Yeah, definitely go to our Facebook page for that because we shared it earlier today as a video. I will put that in the chat. Facebook.com/realmonsterspod, I believe it is.
I've been so wrapped up in our conversation that I forgot to start one of the slideshows.
That's all right. And if we could go ahead and do that now, but yeah, so he founds this new religion, this Aum Shinrikyo, and essentially what it is was sort of a hodgepodge of esoteric Buddhism, Nostradamus, apocalyptic Christianity, and alternative science like what do they call it, parapsychology, and things like that.
Okay.
And in a lot of ways, it was like Scientology. When they got members in there, they would collect information on them to be used later, but they would also subject them to extreme pain. The rituals were just, oh my God. They ran the gamut from tame to holy fuck, what are you doing? Basically.
Torture, basically.
Yeah. They would plunge the followers into boiling water, was a big one.
That's been known to be bad for you.
They actually had one death from it.
Only one.
Yeah, only one with this. And by about this time, I don't know how the hell he did it. It had to be his charisma. They gained about 17,000 followers. And this would ultimately go up
Over what
by
kind of
19.
How long did it take him to get to 17,000?
It was about 5 years.
Jesus.
1984 to
Christ, that's
1989.
Okay, that's impressive. I have to say that to Jones never got close to those numbers.
No, nowhere close. And it would get even higher. In 1995, it was 40,000 followers across the world.
What?
Yep, 40,000 of these people who believe in this guru. They believed that he could levitate and that he could read minds, was the two big things. And as you can see with the picture of the Dalai Lama there, they had kind of a dual persona, the way a lot of cults do. Like Jim Jones, for instance.
Right.
They would project peace and love on the outside, and it would be just hell on the inside. In a few other of these rituals, members would be made to drink a mixture of Asahara's blood and dirty bathwater. Yeah.
That was a Monty Python insult.
But yeah, even with these rituals, he got up to 40,000 people following him. 40 freaking thousand. And you know how much money that got him controlling?
A lot, I'm going to guess.
$1 billion.
Jeez.
Bubba billion with the B.
That's a lot.
And one big thing that he would say to members, you have to renounce all your wealth and give it to me for safekeeping. You know, that's kind of a standard cult trick.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But another thing that he would do.
I am spiritually elevated enough where I'm not affected by it.
Dirty materialism.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have any dirty materialism. I'm better than all of you.
No.
I am the Messiah.
I have no personal emotional attachment to my 40 Rolls Royces and my Gulfstream.
Well, you know, that's interesting. We're going to be getting into how they spent that $1 billion. But yeah, $1 billion. Another thing that he would do is
I am so fucking in the wrong business.
Yeah, we should.
I gotta get
into starting a cult.
I gotta get the cult thing going.
But wow, yeah, $1 billion.
By the way, there will be no suicide pact. Just gonna make that clear up front.
Another way that they would cash flow this was that he would have members. He would literally force them to extort money from family members. And this very much was up to and including kidnapping them and ransoming them.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was one way that they would cash flow it. They also would do the cash flow through making illegal drugs in their plant. And get this, before we get into the gas attacks, they had the capacity and to ultimately make 70 tons of sarin gas.
That sounds like more than what Hitler made.
Way more. Hitler and the Nazis, like we said, only had 12,000. 70,000 tons of sarin gas is enough to kill the entire population of Tokyo at that time.
Jesus.
32.577 million people. Enough to just wipe them out.
Wow.
But in that same plant, they were also making mustard gas, VX gas, and botulinum toxin, and other biological warfare. They even sent
if they had just waited until Botox became a thing, they could have had another billion going.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, they were making all that stuff. And Asahara actually even had a couple of the cultists go to Zaire and collect Ebola to bring back.
Oh, man. That's right out of a Tom Clancy novel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and they were doing all this under the Japanese government, who basically did nothing at the time. And the big reason for that was that the cultists had infiltrated the government.
Yeah.
They had people at high places all over that would hide evidence and do a bunch of stuff, which we'll be getting into. But, oh yeah, and finally getting into Australia there. They bought a ranch in Australia that was
big deal.
to, yeah, definitely. I'm sure there's a lot of that out there in the bush and that imaginary Scooby-Doo country. Because it does look like Scooby-Doo on a map.
It does. Well, you know, there was a Hindu cult that bought a ranch in eastern Oregon, southeastern Oregon. Big deal. You buy a ranch. Your people go there and camp out, right?
Yep, people can watch that actually on Netflix. It's Wild Wild Country.
Yeah.
Is a show about that called. But yeah, they bought this ranch in Australia, which was next to a uranium mine.
Oh, that's a little different.
And what was the plan with that? The plans were to ultimately make a suitcase nuke and take it into the World Trade Center and blow it up.
You know, these guys not so bright. Let me tell you why. It's so much easier just to buy a bomb from the Ruskies.
Well, you know, it's interesting
They
that
had
you
the
mentioned
cash.
the Russians. Oh, yeah. They had the people, too, and they were actually already in talks with the Russians. They bought a shitload of weapons from them that they were stockpiling, including plans that were stolen from a Russian contractor to build tanks. They stole them.
Oh.
Just flat out. And they also were able to smuggle in an attack helicopter into Japan.
What?
Yeah.
Like piece by piece, right?
No, they flew it in.
They flew it in?
Yep.
How the hell do you fly an attack helicopter into a country without somebody? Oh, because they had their people in place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they had them in place.
Right.
And you know, they did absolutely nothing.
Gotta remember that step when we do the cult.
Yep. Absolutely. But a lot of this money was also being laundered through their yoga studios and their computer repair shops, which were owned actually by the group and the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia.
Oh.
So they get into this too. They were acting as muscle for the group for a lot of things.
Okay.
But in 1989, Aum had a follower defect. So what do? They kidnap him, they torture him, and the government ultimately, for some reason, started investigating. So the lawyer who was looking at this disappeared with his wife and child. They were later found murdered and buried in the forest around
Wow.
Tokyo. Yeah.
So a
three
lot
of
like Scientology.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They definitely have their share of these things going on, and that's another thing. The absolute scale of all of this is just mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
So, with that case, when they did start investigating, their people in the Tokyo police destroyed evidence and ultimately just shut that investigation down.
Jeez.
So, 1990 rolls around. There are 24 Aum members on the ballot in Japan. And
Are they
what do they?
open? Are they openly members?
I don't know if it's openly, but people do know.
Okay.
It might have been passed, sort of on the down low. But they ended up getting a pitiful 1,700 votes.
All right. Way to go, Tokyo.
So what does Asahara do from there? He modifies his initial prophecies, which said that we
Oh.
need to destroy the United States because they're the great evil that brought on all this spiritual decay. These whole ideas where the point of all that torture was to clear out what they called the bad data from their minds.
So much
And
like Scientology.
oh yeah, very much so. Do we have that picture of the girl wearing the headset?
Yeah, that was just coming. That just passed through just a second ago.
That
Um,
picture was another ritual that they would do. That headset is interesting. The electrodes stimulate different areas of your brain. Um, have you ever worn a Shakti helmet?
I don't even know that word.
It was interesting. I can't remember when it was made, but it's on the same principle. I actually bought one off of eBay some years ago. You put it on your head and you can tweak the areas of your brain that's stimulated. So if you want to go for like the temporal lobe or the
There it
frontal lobe,
is.
you can tweak it from there. I did it once and had it on my temporal lobe for 10 minutes at a high setting,
Yeah.
and I was seeing shadow people from that.
Really?
Yeah, I took it off. I mean, literally, it stimulated fear. But the point of this with this ritual was to get the guru's thoughts directly into your head.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah. The good data replacing the bad data was the whole
Mm.
idea. So they would
So,
do that. They would wear it and they would take LSD too.
well, Jesus, that's a combination for you.
Yeah. A lot of them were force fed it.
So there was a prophecy around this election.
Oh, yeah, there was. This new prophecy, modified by the guru, said World War III would occur after a chemical weapons attack in 1995.
What was the prophecy before that, though?
It was much more vague before that. I
But
don't know
it,
if he really had
but
an end
my point
times.
being that there was a prophecy around this election that failed to come true,
Yes.
like prophecies tend to do.
Yep.
And what's fascinating about it, and I've mentioned this in the past, that there's somebody did a research paper called "When Prophecies Never," or "When Prophecies Fail."
Uh huh.
Um, and I'm going to look this up. If you're ever interested in how, so you would think from an outsider's perspective,
That they would say they're full of shit and move on. This guy
yes,
is manipulating me. But yeah, it's almost like they double down on that bad mental energy.
in fact, and that is in fact the case. So what happens is that you will get a small percentage of defectors who go, "This is bullshit. They said this would happen and it didn't happen. I'm out of here." But what
Yep.
happens for most people is like there will be a quiet period, and then the leaders will come back and go, "Hey guys, so we just weren't worthy enough for this. We have to we have to do better."
Yep.
And then people, as you said, literally double down, and they actually become stronger believers because of the failed prophecy. It's so counterintuitive that it's hard to believe.
Wow. I mean, it really is. You would think that they would do the rational thing and get out,
Well, I
but they
think
don't.
my guess is that they're not there for rational reasons to begin with.
No, they've forfeited it. They've sold that
Yeah,
capacity to the
yeah,
guru,
yes.
most definitely. But let's see. Fast forward to 1994. There was another case against Aum Shinrikyo, and the way that they managed to stop it, they took a van that was retrofitted to spray sarin to the area of Tokyo where the judges lived, who sat on the panel and they were going to deliver a verdict. So you have these cultists, they go there, they spray it, they get all these judges sick, and no verdict is read. And it just
Wow,
sort of goes away from there.
wow. But they didn't
Yeah.
kill anybody. They just made him sick.
No, they killed 8 when they
Oh,
did that
Jesus.
attack. Yeah. And that was, like you said, a year before 1995.
And nothing blew back on them over this?
No, that was how well connected they were. Pretty mind blowing.
That's crazy.
Yep.
You'd think there would be some people somewhere who weren't under their thumb who would be, some journalists or some other politicians who'd be going, "Hey guys, this smells like week old surströmming, lutefisk,
Yep. Oh, that's funny you mentioned that.
kimchi."
Lutefisk. You can have Minnesotan. That makes me laugh. Dang. For
Uh,
people who don't know, it's a really stinky fish.
it smells like sulfur.
Yes, it does. That's because it's from the pits of the frozen hell. It's known as Minnesota.
Well, originally it's from Scandinavia. That's where Minnesota got it, and that's where
Yep.
I came across it in Sweden. And
Yep.
that's not even the worst shit that they eat fish wise. They have a, yeah, that's really off topic. Never mind. Nasty shit.
uh, yeah, that attack killed 8 and injured 500.
Wow.
500 people. It's just
And yet
fascinating.
nothing happened.
Nothing. That is how well connected this group was. But
Well, that brings up a question for later that I hopefully will remember to ask.
oh, absolutely. Man, I need to find out where I was there. Like I said, I was kind of skipping around here. Um, eschatology we talked about.
I just, it seems to me like while you're looking at your notes, the real challenge in cult building is like the first person.
Yeah. Oh
You're
yeah.
you're just you're just a guy or a gal, although it does tend to be guys, who
Hmm.
says, "Hey people, I'm a new religion and it's just me. Want to
Stand on the
join up?"
corner. Stand on the corner singing Age of Aquarius and mumbling about the god they invented.
Yeah. That god, oh,
Essential.
just happens to be me, by the way. Just saying.
But I'm not gonna reveal that to you till later.
Right.
But
How do you get that?
yeah,
How do you get that first person to join up? That's a puzzle in my mind. I mean,
it
going
really
from
is.
10,000 to 20,000 is one thing, but going from 0 to 1 seems to be the bigger challenge.
Oh yeah, and all the way in there, into 40,000 people. But yeah, after the 1995 attack, they couldn't rely on their people in government anymore. But they did manage to execute a couple of attacks. They kidnapped one Japanese official and actually fried him in an oven specially built for the purpose.
They built a fucking oven to cook a guy?
Yeah. Yep.
To cook one guy?
Yeah. I'm sure they were intending on more, but yeah, 200 cultists in Aum Shinrikyo were arrested with these raids that occurred after the 1995 attack. 200 of them.
Wow.
But before that, they had a phosphorus gas attack that injured 400, and a sarin bomb that they tried to deliver to the governmental sector of Tokyo. And get this could have killed 20,000 more people
Jesus.
if it had detonated, but it didn't. But
All right.
they,
So they've got all these brainiacs signed up for the cult,
yep.
and yet their technology keeps failing.
Yeah, exactly. They keep fucking up.
And they thought they could take uranium ore and convert it all the way into a um, bomb.
Yep. Apparently, with that.
Jesus, they can't even get their damn plastic packets to pop.
Nope. They can't even refine their
Their
sarin in the correct
sarin
way.
sufficiently. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, thank God they kept fucking up, but yeah, it's a wonder as to why that all happened. But yeah, in the 1995 attack, 60% of the affected people had permanent eye damage at various levels.
Jeez.
It's amazing, but yeah, they end up arresting 200 and they end up arresting Asahara as well. And after that, his daughter takes over the group. And she is just absolutely brutal with that. She
Wow.
was the one that constructed the sarin bomb and the phosphorus gas. It's just amazing. The last Aum Shinrikyo member wasn't arrested until 2012. But
Really?
get this. Oh, yeah. But get this, when they had Asahara in jail,
Yeah.
his trial took 8 years.
What?
Yeah, 8 years.
Actual trial?
Yep. He kept dragging it on with long, rambling, incoherent speeches about how he's the Christ-like figure. He's like a mix of Christ and Buddha all in one, and how he's going to be saved by, divine power from all that.
Bundy tried to do that.
Yeah?
I mean, he didn't claim divinity, but he definitely tried to drag shit out.
Yeah, absolutely. He didn't claim he was God or anything, but
Nope.
yeah.
He just
Hey,
tried.
man.
He definitely tried to turn his trial into a circus and drag shit out as long as possible.
Yep.
You know, here's the thing. I would be so tempted with
Mm-hmm.
somebody claiming divinity who's on trial. It'd be like, prove it.
Yeah. Test the gods.
Yeah. Here's
Absolutely.
I don't know. Here's a single bullet. Shoot yourself and live.
Yeah, give it to him. Seriously.
Yeah. You got one bullet and we've got 12 pointed on you if you try to shoot somebody else, but uh, let's see you do it, man.
Yeah, come down from your cross.
Yeah, that kind of
But
thing.
But ultimately, it wasn't until July 6th of last year that Asahara and 6 of his followers were hung.
Oh, no kidding.
Yep. And really interesting before that, when he started going into incoherency, he went on what was essentially a hunger strike. And he also refused to shit in a toilet. He wanted an adult diaper 24/7.
Oh, that's just
Yep.
gross.
And God knows why.
Yeah, why would
But
you want that?
I
Baby
have it.
diapers are bad enough.
Yep. But yeah, and they ultimately hung him. And after that, it's interesting. Aum Shinrikyo actually fractured into 2 different sects, basically. One of them still recognized Asahara as their leader, and the other one just, what's the word for it? Excommunicated him, basically.
Not unusual for a cult when the original charismatic leader um, dies to have you know, uh, strong division within the remaining leadership
Mm-hmm.
and fight for control.
Yep, and a schism occurs.
Yeah. Um,
But
did survivors sue them? Do you know?
I didn't see anything about anything
I
like
don't
that.
I don't know enough about Japanese law to know that whether or not, that kind of liability is even a possibility. I kind of assume it is, but maybe not.
Uh, it,
Japanese
in,
law is significantly different than our own.
oh yeah, it definitely is. And another interesting thing about that, with that law point, one thing that they were going to start with those millions of dollars in their weapons program
Yeah.
was a factory to make AK-47s. And this is in a country that has very restrictive laws on
Yeah,
firearms,
right.
by the way.
How do you
But
how do you get a factory up and running producing um that kind of a product without I keep forgetting that they've infiltrated all levels of government.
oh yeah, and they have people all over.
Yeah.
For instance, in 2016 in Montenegro, they deported 58 Russian Shinrikyo cultists just for belonging to the cult.
Wow.
Yep, they didn't commit any crimes, and Montenegro deported them. And this saga still was not over on January 1, 2019. There was a man who got into a car and tried to run down people in a low-tech terror attack.
Where was
That
this?
was that was January 1 in Tokyo.
Oh, in Tokyo.
Yep. 9 were injured, nobody died in the attack. And when they arrested him, he said it was for the executions of the 6 martyrs and Shoko.
Wow.
So, he might still be seeing these people. And the brutality is just the scale of it, man. Wow.
Yeah. It's gotta be. Um, I I really am really super curious about the progression of indoctrination to bring someone from, just normal living their lives to, hey, let's go murder people.
Oh, yeah. And to bring those levels of society in. And a cardiologist, to get him to break his Hippocratic oath and kill
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
And it's just amazing. It speaks to Asahara's charisma, because he literally started it all by just a crazy blind guy going to a corner in Tokyo and leafleting people.
wow.
It's just amazing.
I mean, as cool as it sounds to have your own cult, I got better things to do with my time.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And in his core message was this quote: souls attached to materialism or souls attached to carnal pleasures are most definitely going to hell. That's directly from Asahara's mouth. And from one ex-believer, I was a believer in Aum Shinrikyo. I believed capitalism was evil and that America was the ultimate devil who started that.
Mm.
Enslaved the world was the verbiage. So,
Yeah, capitalism. People bitch about capitalism, and the main problem that with
mhm.
people complain about capitalism is the, no, it's not under fucking government control. Shit can happen. Bad shit can happen. People can do bad shit. But you know what? That's the point.
Yep.
The
Yeah,
point the
so
point is to have that kind of freedom and not having the government's stupid ass fingers into every goddamn thing.
yeah. And who defines bad shit?
The government.
Yeah. When you get into that, and that's what makes it problematic,
Yeah.
especially in socialist or communist countries.
Because you never know when some goddamn crazy ass cult leader has people infiltrating the government to make those calls.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So leave it free to the citizen.
Yeah.
Let them have the good sense to decide that this guy's a fucking asshole and I want nothing to do with him.
Man, it's these cults, man. It's the things that they're able to do. So what happened to all that money? I wonder.
That is a great question. I have no idea. But yeah, the first suspect with the 1995 attack was actually North Korea. Their
That makes
intent.
sense. That
Oh
actually
yeah,
makes sense, right?
yeah, in that part of the world. They
Yeah.
were hoping it would have been the United States, which I don't see how that follows considering their actions, that it was the US.
They wanted to get the US and Japan at war again, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically, but
Well,
looking at how they
that's just
actually executed the
idiotic.
crime.
I
Oh,
just
yeah.
they just had no understanding of the dynamic between these two countries. That
No.
there is almost no possibility of getting us at war against each other.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the other thing, look at how they did the crime. There's nothing within that would have pointed to America or
No,
American influence.
no.
So, what the hell?
If they wanted to get a war going between the United States and somebody in Asia, the thing to do would have been to make an attack on, say, the U.S. embassy and make it look like North Korea did it.
Yeah, or something similar.
Something along those
Yeah,
lines.
absolutely. Uh, oh, another quote from Asahara. If I am the Christ, as has been foretold, and the Third World War happens, it will be a great leap forward for all in Aum Shinrikyo, and for myself.
Yeah, sorry, dude, you're not leaping anywhere.
Yeah, I hope you're rotting in hell. Maybe you can leap there at the fire under you.
Man.
It's amazing. I,
We should next time. Next cult we're gonna do, obviously, well, I mean, obvious to us, is Manson, right?
yep, yep, on August the 8th. Join us for that show. That is the actual 50th anniversary of the Tate murders,
Yeah.
August 8th through 9th.
One of the things that would be interesting to cover for that show is what's the profile of a cult member? Not a cult leader, but a cult member.
You know that the bit that I've read about that, it is very difficult to define
Is it
because it's
really?
so broad. Yep.
Aren't there some kind of some commonalities? I mean, there's these leaders look for something, right? I mean,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, it's very similar to an abuser. If you've ever known abusers or abusees, um,
Mm-hmm.
I've mostly known people who have been abused, and abusers can just like pick them out of a crowd. The people who are will be able to control and manipulate,
Prey on,
prey on.
basically.
Yeah,
Just like a
they
predator
can just
chasing an
they can
animal.
fucking spot them from across the room.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
know
there's
how. I
definitely
don't know
that.
how, but similar type of thing for the Colts. I think reminds me very much of that. How do they spot these people? How do they know who to target? I I
There
don't know.
absolutely would have to be a commonality there. But I was just thinking like how Jim Jones primarily picked out of the, dregs and the people from the wrong side of the tracks
Right.
for his cult. But
But this guy
um,
didn't.
no, Shoko made it a point to recruit from the upper middle class almost exclusively.
RC in the comments says usually it's people that want to belong to something bigger than themselves, or that's one take that I've heard. Um, yeah, and I think also who are in religion in general, that's also holds true, and looking for people who are looking for meaning in their lives.
Oh, absolutely with that. And that's something that transcends class. It
Yes,
transcends social status. It can be anywhere, really.
very true.
It's interesting you bring that up with religion. I don't think we've ever discussed what the difference is between a religion and a cult.
Can you give us the cliff notes?
The way that I look at that with a religion, you don't have the abuse of people.
Hold on.
Yeah. I mean, they did abuse people, but
There's that whole Catholicism thing that's been going on a while, like I don't know,
yeah.
a couple of thousand years.
Oh, definitely. I'm not saying that they're necessarily all that much better, but the doctrine doesn't have a systematic
Mm.
abuse of people, written into it, basically.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's
And
not it's not baked in.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, definitely. And then you have, like RC said in the comments there, a new tends to be grouped more as a cult than a religion as well. But
Yeah, oftentimes, yeah, something that's new, small, distinctly different from what people are used to. Um,
hmm
I think I agree that a lot of times cults have abuse built into them. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
and absolutely. So all very interesting. And then
yeah,
you
yeah,
also have the factor of it all being concentrated into one spiritual head. It's
yes,
interesting again with Catholicism and the Pope.
right,
But
right. Well, they have the benefit of billions of members and history.
hmm
But ultimately, though, here's the interesting distinction where you might where that might actually hold up is that the Pope has ultimate power over the church, but he's not actually viewed as, the deity,
Divine.
the divine.
Yeah. Yeah, he essentially just has
He's the top
parliamentary
administrator. Yeah,
powers.
he's the top administrator.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a common Catholic view of papal infallibility as well, that he's just infallible on those questions of doctrine where he has to essentially break an impasse or a tie
Hmm.
when they're voting on it.
Yeah.
So, and to give people a little bit of background here, I was raised in a half Catholic, half Lutheran home, and
Okay.
my family actually has printed a missal for the Catholic Church ever since 1939. So,
Oh.
and I won't give the name of that out because they might not want to be associated with the content. But yeah, they've done that since then, and
What is a
I
missile besides a, flying bomb?
this is MISSAL.
Ah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a book that has the order of the mass in it.
Okay.
You know, the specified readings throughout the season, the psalms and
Gotcha.
songs that you sing.
Okay.
But yeah, I was actually raised Roman Catholic through all of that, and I defected to what's called Old Catholicism.
Older than Roman Catholic?
It's a good question as to why they call it old. But basically, the divider there, they are Roman Catholics, but they don't believe in the Pope's authority. They don't believe in papal infallibility. And they
Okay.
also don't believe in things like celibacy for their priests.
Ah, smart move.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, it actually started from what was called the Union of Utrecht in the Netherlands some years ago, where they
Okay.
had a difference with the church and they just broke from them. Said, essentially, screw you, we're going to form our own church.
Well, there you go. That's happened a fair amount of times throughout history.
Well, it tends to when you stubbornly cling to doctrine that may not be working the way a lot of Roman Catholics in the hierarchy do,
Yeah.
in the bureaucracy of the church.
Yeah, from my observations the problem with any doctrine. As soon as you stake out a position, somebody's going to disagree with it.
Hmm. Well,
And
and you can have some disagreement.
but the at the same time, if you try to not stake out a position, then you really got nothing.
Yeah. Well, and like the Rush song says, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice
Right.
with that.
I read an article not too long ago that the religious denominations that have tried to be more nebulous in their belief systems and more, say, open in their ideals are
Hmm.
actually seeing a decline in membership over those that have more strictly defined beliefs.
Yeah, I actually read that too. And my big question there was I've heard all over that there's a erosion of the evangelical base with churches. And they're actually losing a lot of the younger members, but we're not quite seeing it yet. It's
I
something
believe that.
that is sort of bubbling below the surface.
Yeah, I can believe that. There's so I was raised in a Mormon environment, actually,
Hmm.
um,
Very
and
interesting.
yeah, and so I've had a fair amount of experience with strict religions, and
Oh, yeah.
um, it's really even 40 years ago, holding on to the youth was a challenge. And I can imagine it's just gotten more difficult over time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Well,
that
and
there's so much competition for their attention. There's so much competition for their time,
hmm
and uh, you know, so many competing uh, ideas as far as what's right and wrong and what's acceptable and what isn't.
oh yeah, and then there's a lot of people questioning that too,
And
as
what,
you said.
yeah, absolutely. And you can be raised in a any particular religion or doctrine and still come to the realization at some point that hey, it's not for me.
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely. That was kind of me with Catholicism. Although religiously, I was in a very liberal environment, because the Lutheran part of that is actually ELCA, Evangelical Lutheran Church of America,
Okay.
and they tend to be pretty moderate in their thinking on doctrine. Not like the Missouri Synod Lutherans, for instance, who still segregate men and women in the church
Oh,
when they
really?
have service.
No
Yeah, and they
kidding.
also don't let the women participate in it, as in do a reading or be a Eucharistic minister.
Wow.
But it's also interesting with that because you don't see that erosion at all. And it's so easy to think the opposite, especially when you have people like Mike Pence in the White House.
Yeah.
It's easy to think that evangelicals are at the height of their power,
I,
essentially.
yeah, I wouldn't think so. I think that their peak passed in the 80s actually.
Yeah, that very well could be. You mean with Reagan when they
Yeah.
started all that?
Yeah.
It could be. But we're only now starting to see it trickle out.
Well, I think, oddly enough, I think the liberal media, it plays it up bigger than it is, kind of like they did with the Soviets, right? That
Yeah,
the New York Times thought the Soviets were this big badass military juggernaut, and when the wall came down, we found out that that was just a lot of bullshit and
yeah.
rusted out ships and tanks that hadn't been maintained in decades.
hmm Well, yeah, definitely. It can be in the nature of certain media outlets to sensationalize. You know.
I think it benefits them to have a boogeyman that's big and powerful. I think they make a lot of money off of that.
Oh yeah,
No
it
matter
gets
what your
clicks, it gets
position is,
views.
no matter what your position is, you know the strength of your story actually lies in your antagonist. And so if you're if you want a really good story that's going to raise money for your cause, you need a really powerful antagonist. And
Oh,
so it
absolutely.
suits people to make sure that your antagonist is very scary.
Yeah, it gets some more clicks, views, and reads.
Yeah, and donations.
Yeah, and ad revenue.
Yep.
So, yeah,
Well, wasn't this a trip?
certainly was, man. I don't think we will look at another cult with the ambition, you know, that these had.
No, no. Even the Maharisha from Oregon, they wanted to take over, but they were, by comparison, small potatoes. They just wanted to take over one county.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then you had Manson, which we'll be getting into. I'm going to argue during that show that the motivation was primarily greed, but we'll be
Oh,
getting to that in 2
the
weeks.
Mahar, which group was primarily greed?
Manson.
Oh, really? I can't
Well,
wait to hear that argument. That's
we will
fascinating.
we will be getting into that August 8th. I have a shitload of notes, and I need to organize them.
And I think next week we are talking about a summertime murderer.
Yep. Son of
Son of
Sam and the
Sam.
dog that told him to kill.
I mean, I have conversations with my dog, but we tend to stick to art criticism and not get into murder topics.
Well, that's good. I don't, I don't think we need any more murderous pooches in the world.
No, no, no.
Yep. That astounds me that he's still alive, too. David Berkowitz.
Wow, I didn't know that. Well, that's going to be a fun show.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Hey, thanks, RC. Looking forward to the Manson episode. With that, we're also going to be getting pretty heavy into the history of the time, which very much includes
The music.
Manson's attachment, I guess you could call it, to the Beatles and the White Album, of course, and their history, and also to the history of the Beach Boys. So,
The Beach Boys, the clean cut surfer boys?
yep,
No, 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 no.
I
Damn
am
it.
going to ruin the Beach Boys for most people.
If it hasn't happened yet. Um,
Oh, I
so,
love their music.
so that's in 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
Oh, is it 3? August the 8th.
Okay, 2 weeks.
Yep, 2 weeks.
Jesus Christ, summer's halfway over already.
Man, it sucks. I need to get in and see Tarantino's movie too while we were thinking about Manson.
There you
Once
go.
Upon a Time in Hollywood. That Manson episode will be must listen to get the background on a part of the story of that movie. With
Okay.
Margaret Robbie as Sharon Tate.
Man, we got some good stuff coming up. If you hit like, share share the links to the show, and get your friends to watch and get your enemies to watch more.
Oh, exactly. And head over to our Facebook page where we post a lot of the sources that we use for our research and, funny shit as I find it. I try
Yeah,
to.
yeah,
And just a bunch of, relevant stuff that'll hopefully darken your day a little bit with the depravity that we study.
absolutely. But in a good way.
Oh, yeah. You can't appreciate the good without knowing the evil, right?
That's right.
That is going to be the core philosophy of our cult.
There you go. Good night,
Yep.
everybody.
Night.